The arena air was stale, heavy with the scent of spent pyro, and the resignation of a crowd that believed they had seen it all. In the center of the ring, under the harsh glare of the blue Friday Night SmackDown lights, stood the champion. She didn't just hold the title, she held the division hostage. For 300 days, she had suffocated hope, dismantling challengers with a clinical precision that bordered on boredom. Out. She raised the microphone, her voice echoing with that familiar, grating arrogance, telling the world that there was no one left. No one to challenge the throne. No one to step across the line. The audience booed, but it was a low, tired sound. They knew she was right. The locker room was empty. The legends were gone. The dominance was absolute. But the universe abhors a vacuum, and arrogance is always the prelude to a fall. Just as the champion raised the gold above her head, signaling the production crew to cut to black, the unexpected happened. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a shout. It was a glitch. The massive lead Titantron behind her flickered once, twice distorting her image into jagged static. The arena plunged into a sudden, suffocating darkness. The low hum of the amplifiers cut out, leaving 20,000 people in a confusion that instantly curdled into anticipation. In the pitch black, the silence was louder than any cheer. You could feel the shift in atmospheric pressure. The champion lowered her belt, squinting into the void, her confidence fracturing for the first time in a year. She knew, just as the fans in the nosebleeds knew, that the script had just been burned. Something ancient, something dangerous, had just walked through the door. A singular, piercing violin note sliced through the darkness, followed immediately by a bass drop that rattled the floorboards under the ringside seats. The lights didn't just turn on. They exploded in a kaleidoscope of blinding white and neon purple. The roar that erupted from the crowd wasn't human. It was seismic. It was the sound of 20,000 people losing their collective minds at the exact same second. Commentary was barely audible over the tsunami of noise. You could hear the headset microphones peaking, the play-by-play announcer screaming, his voice cracking with genuine, unscripted disbelief. It can't be. Are you kidding me? She vowed never to set foot in this ring again. The camera cut to the stage, zooming in through the thick, rolling fog. From the mist, a silhouette emerged. Mistakable. The posture was different this time. Gone was the eager rookie or the flashy superstar of the past. This figure walked with a slow, predatory cadence. She wore leather and intent. As she stepped into the light, the camera caught the look in her eyes. It wasn't joy, it wasn't showmanship. It was the cold, hard stare of someone coming to collect a debt. The champion in the ring stumbled back, clutching the ropes, her face a mask of legitimate horror. This wasn't just a challenger returning, this was a ghost from her past. The returnee didn't play to the crowd. She didn't smile. She marched down the ramp like an executioner approaching the gallows, her eyes locked on the gold. The commentary team was hyperventilating, trying to explain the history, the bad blood, and the impossibility of this moment. But the visuals spoke louder. The queen had returned to burn down the castle she helped build. She slid under the bottom rope, the movement smooth, practiced, and lethal. The music cut abruptly, leaving the arena in a bubbling cauldron of tension. The two women stood 10 feet apart. No referees, no security. Just two forces of nature occupying the same canvas square. Champion, usually so vocal, was rendered mute. She clutched the title belt to her chest, using it less as a trophy and more as a shield. The returner stood perfectly still, her chest heaving slightly, soaking in the gravity of the moment. She didn't ask for a microphone. She didn't need to cut a promo to explain why she was here. The story was written in the scar tissue of their shared history. The crowd began a chant, starting as a murmur and swelling into a deafening mantra of her name. It was a wave of sound that crashed against the ring apron, forcing the champion to retreat to the corner. This was the shift in power. Without throwing a single punch, the returner had stripped the champion of her aura. She took one step forward and the champion flinched, a micro-expression of fear caught in 4,000 resolution. That flinch was the story. It told the world that the reign of terror was built on glass. The returner smiled then, a small dangerous curve of the lips that promised violence. She pointed not at the sign, not at the crowd, but directly at the champion's eyes. It was psychological warfare at its finest. The air in the arena felt electric, charged with the kind of kinetic energy that only exists seconds before a fight breaks out. The predator had become the prey, and the entire world was watching the hierarchy collapse in real time. The physical explosion was inevitable. The champion, cornered and humiliated, lashed out. She swung the title belt, a desperate, clumsy arc meant to decapitate. The returner had been watching the tapes. She ducked under the brass with frightening speed, coming up behind the champion. A backstabber, transitioned into a submission hold that hadn't been seen on television in 4 years. The crowd gasped, a sharp intake of breath as the champion screamed, tapping out on a mat that wasn't even sanctioned for a match. Security rushed the ring, a flood of black shirts trying to separate the two, but the damage was already done. The returner released the hold, not because she was forced to, but because she had made her point. Backstage, the camera followed the returner as she walked through the curtain, ignoring the producers and the frantic questions from the interviewers. The chaos behind the scenes mirrored the chaos in the arena. Social media was melting down, timelines flooding with clips of the entrance, the stare down, and the humiliation of the champion. This wasn't just a wrestling segment. It was a viral, cultural moment. We saw glimpses of other wrestlers in the hallway, shocked faces, whispers, people pulling out their phones to check if the rumors were true. The hierarchy of the women's division had been decapitated in 5 minutes. The champion was left in the ring, clutching her shoulder, shouting threats that no one was listening to anymore. The narrative had shifted. The spotlight had moved. The calm shock of the entrance had transitioned into the controlled intensity of a war that was just beginning. And everyone knew that Friday nights would never be the same again. As the show went off the air, the lingering image wasn't the violence or the noise. It was the returner standing at the top of the ramp, looking back at the ring one last time. In that fleeting second, the mask of the warrior slipped, revealing the human beneath. Why did they come back? Why return to the pain, the travel, the politics? It wasn't for the money. It wasn't even for the title. The twist of this return wasn't that she wanted to win the championship. It was that she needed to save it. Champion had made the title about herself, about ego and dominance. The returner came back to remind the world that the legacy of the division belongs to the people, not the person holding the belt. This entrance was a mirror. It reflected our own desire for justice, our need to see the arrogant fall and the exiled return. It was a reminder that in the theater of combat, nothing is ever truly finished. The shock wasn't just that she was back. It was the realization of how much we had missed the feeling of genuine uncertainty. In an era of spoilers and dirt sheets, a true surprise is the rarest currency in wrestling. As the screen faded to black, the viewer was left with a heavy, reflective thought. The returner didn't come back to reclaim her spot on the mountain. She came back to prove that the mountain was hers all along. The entrance was just the knock on the door. The real story, the dismantling of a false idol, was the chapter we were all about to write together. She's back, and the balance has finally been restored.